Commander Krell of the Galactic Alliance fleet had seen many things in his 6 decades of service. He'd witnessed the fall of the hegemony, survived the Zargon incursion, and even managed to file his tax returns on time for 3 consecutive cycles. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for humans. The newest members of the Galactic Alliance were odd. There was simply no other word for it. Their other species joined with careful diplomatic consideration and generations of preparatory cultural exchange. Humans had basically shown up at the galactic equivalent of a high society dinner party wearing flip-flops and asking where they could plug in their blender to make margaritas. And yet, here he was, commanding the defense outpost of Proxima Station with a recently integrated human contingent. The Alliance had insisted on diversity initiatives, and Krell was nothing if not a loyal officer. Still, he had questions about their methods, particularly in one department. "Commander, the human medical team has arrived," announced Lieutenant Vapri, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence, a sure sign of anxiety among Selnari. "Excellent. Send in their chief medical officer immediately," Krell replied, his mandibles clicking with forced enthusiasm. The door to his command center slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a human of average height with what Krell had come to recognize as a scruffy appearance. His uniform, while technically regulation, seemed to have been slept in, repeatedly. "Dr. Jack Reynolds, reporting as ordered, Commander," the human said with a casual salute that made Krell's exoskeleton itch. "Doctor, I understand you've been briefed about our situation?" Jack nodded, absently adjusting something on his wrist device. "Yep. Mysterious illness spreading through the barracks. Your medical team stumped. Soldiers showing symptoms of delayed neural response. Feather shedding or scale molting, depending on the species, and an inexplicable attraction to interpretive dance." Krell's upper antennae twitched. "This is no laughing matter, Doctor. We've lost 30% operational capacity in just 3 days. The drift pirates in this sector will not hesitate to take advantage if word gets out." "No one's laughing, Commander," Jack said, though his lip corners were definitely curved upward. "I brought my best team. We'll figure it out." "I hope so. Because Proxima Station is more than just a military outpost, it's the only thing standing between the core worlds and the unregulated territories. If we fail here, the dominoes start falling, bad guys pour in, civilization collapses, yada yada," Jack interrupted. "Standard apocalypse scenario, got it. Look, I need to see your patients and get my team set up." As Krell led the human toward the medical bay, he couldn't help but notice the casual way Dr. Reynolds moved, as if treating a mysterious illness that had stymied the Alliance's best medical minds was just another Tuesday for him. "Our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Thrix, will brief you on all attempts at treatment thus far," Krell explained as they walked. "Can't wait," Jack replied, in a tone suggesting he very much could. "By the way, you might want to prepare your crew for our methods. We tend to be a bit unconventional." Something in the human's tone made Krell's threat sacks inflate defensively. "Unconventional how, exactly?" Jack simply smiled. "Let's just say there's a reason human medical practice has been described as controlled chaos by your diplomatic corps." Krell had the distinct feeling he was going to regret this cultural exchange program. The medical bay of Proxima Station had been converted into a quarantine zone. Rows of containment pods lined the walls, each holding a soldier in various states of distress. Some were molting excessively, others were attempting to communicate exclusively through interpretive movement, and a few were simply staring at their own appendages in fascination. Dr. Thrix, the station's chief medical officer, was of Exilian, a species known for methodical thinking and an almost religious devotion to protocol. Her 4 slender arms moved with precision as she operated medical equipment, while her bulbous cranium pulsed with the bioluminescent patterns indicating deep concentration. "As you can see, Dr. Reynolds," she said, her voice melodic yet clinical, "we are dealing with an unprecedented neurological condition. It began 7 standard days ago with 3 security officers returning from patrol in the asteroid field. Initial symptoms presented as mild coordination difficulties. but quickly progressed to, she gestured to a draconian soldier who was attempting to recreate the mating dance of extinct Terran birds. Jack said, watching the display with genuine interest. That's actually not bad form. For a reptiloid with no natural knowledge of the peacock. Dr. Thrix's skin flushed a deep purple. This is not a time for humor, Doctor. We have tried neural stabilizers, antimicrobial protocols, psychic dampening fields, and even traditional Andorian cleansing rituals. Nothing has worked. Have you considered it might be environmental? Something they encountered on patrol? Jack asked, already pulling strange instruments from his medical kit. Of course. We've tested for every known pathogen, toxin, and psychic influence in the Alliance database. Yeah, but the universe is big, and the Alliance database ain't exactly comprehensive when it comes to human medical knowledge. Jack turned to the door as it opened, revealing 3 more humans carrying equipment. Ah, the cavalry has arrived. The human medical team quickly introduced themselves. Dr. Maya Patel, a neurologist with rainbow-colored hair, tech specialist Devin Cooper, who looked too young to be a doctor, and nurse Marcus Ortiz, whose muscular build made him look more like a combat specialist than medical personnel. Let's set up shop, Jack instructed his team. Maya, start baseline neurological scans. Devin, environmental analysis. Marcus, help me with patient interviews. Dr. Thrix watched with growing alarm as the humans began unpacking equipment that bore little resemblance to standard Alliance medical technology. Some of it looked decidedly improvised. Is that a modified kitchen appliance? She asked, pointing to a device Devin was calibrating. Sous-vide cooker, he confirmed cheerfully. Repurposed as a portable spectrometer. Works surprisingly well. Jack was already interviewing patients, his approach considerably less formal than Alliance protocols dictated. He sat casually beside containment fields, asking questions that seemed nonsensical to Krell's ears. So, before the space jitters hit, did you notice anything weird about your dreams? Any sudden cravings for foods you normally hate? How about a sudden appreciation for abstract art? Dr. Thrix hovered nervously behind Jack. Dr. Reynolds, our standard diagnostic protocol requires. With all due respect, Doc, Jack interrupted, your standard protocols haven't exactly cracked this case, have they? Sometimes you need to color outside the lines. But there are procedures. Let me tell you something about human medicine, Jack said, standing to face both Thrix and Commander Krell. For most of our history, we were basically just guessing. We used to drill holes in people's heads to let evil spirits out. We prescribed cocaine for children. Hell, we didn't even wash our hands between autopsies and childbirths until embarrassingly recently. Krell's mandibles clicked in horror. But, Jack continued, all that chaotic history gave us something unique: adaptability. We don't just follow the rulebook, we rewrite it when necessary. Sometimes literally on the fly. As if to demonstrate his point, Maya called out from across the room, Jack, I'm getting weird readings from the limbic analogues in the Selnari patients. Reminds me of that thing on Europa Station. Shit, really? Jack's face lit up. That could explain the dance compulsion. Commander Krell watched as the human team fell into a rhythm completely unlike the methodical approach of Alliance medicine. They moved from patient to patient, conducting tests that seemed random, sharing observations in shorthand that barely qualified as language, and occasionally high-fiving when they discovered something interesting. Is this normal? Krell asked Dr. Thrix quietly. If you're asking if human medical practice typically resembles a group of caffeinated toddlers let loose in a laboratory, then yes, Commander. Based on my limited observations, this appears to be their standard methodology. As the day progressed, the human team's unorthodox approach continued to raise eyebrows and antennae alike. Jack began taking samples using methods that made Dr. Thrix physically turn away, while Devin and Maya argued enthusiastically about something called prion-adjacent proteins. That wasn't even in the Alliance medical lexicon. But what truly concerned Commander Krell was the way Dr. Reynolds kept staring thoughtfully at the medical replicator, and muttering calculations to himself with a look that could only be described as dangerously inspired. By the second day, The human medical team had transformed one section of the medical bay into what they called a lab, but what looked to Commander Krell more like the aftermath of an explosion at a technology factory. Equipment was jury-rigged together in configurations that violated at least 17 Alliance safety protocols. "Dr. Reynolds," Krell said, mandibles twitching anxiously as he watched Maya pour something that was definitely not standard reagent into a medical analyzer. "I must express some concerns about your methodology." Jack looked up from a datapad displaying results that were apparently so interesting that he hadn't bothered to sleep. "Oh, the setup? Don't worry about it. This is how we work best." "That device is smoking," Krell pointed out. "It's supposed to do that," Jack replied, not entirely convincingly. Dr. Thrix entered the lab area, her luminescent patterns flashing in what Krell recognized as extreme distress. "Dr. Reynolds, I've just reviewed your initial findings and proposed treatment plan. This cannot possibly be serious." Jack took the datapad from her, glanced at it, and nodded. "Dead serious, I'm afraid. Your patients are suffering from something we've seen before, though never in non-human species. We call it Peterson's cascade, essentially. Their neural pathways are being rewritten by misfolded proteins that piggyback on the standard neural transmission chemicals." "That's not possible," Dr. Thrix insisted. "Such a condition would have been detected by our standard scans." "Not if you don't know what to look for," Maya chimed in. "These proteins are tricky little bastards. They disguise themselves as normal cellular components until they reach critical mass." "Regardless," Dr. Thrix continued, "your proposed treatment involves introducing what is essentially a controlled neurotoxin to force a reset of the affected neural pathways. This is barbaric." "Barbaric worked pretty well for us throughout human history," Jack said with a shrug. "Besides, it's more elegant than it sounds. The treatment creates a temporary shutdown of specific pathways, allowing the brain to rebuild connections without the corrupt template." Commander Krell's antennae flattened against his head. "You're proposing to poison my soldiers' brains and hope they reboot correctly? Absolutely not." "Commander," Jack said, suddenly serious, "your soldiers are already poisoned. The condition is progressive. You've seen how quickly it's spreading. The dance phase is just the beginning. Next comes complete communication breakdown, then autonomic nervous system failure. In humans, we had a 94% success rate with this treatment." "And the other 6%? Krell asked quietly. Jack met his gaze. "They lost fine motor control permanently." "Permanently?" The medical bay fell silent as this information sank in. Finally, Dr. Thrix spoke. "Even if we were to consider such a radical approach, the treatment would need extensive adaptation for each species' unique biology. The risks of imprecise dosages would be catastrophic." "For the first time," Jack smiled, "that's actually the elegant part of our solution. We've developed a smart molecule delivery system that adapts to the recipient's biochemistry. It's self-calibrating." "That technology doesn't exist," Dr. Thrix said flatly. "It does now," Devin called from across the room, where he was making final adjustments to a device that looked suspiciously like it included parts from the mess hall's beverage dispenser. "Just finished compiling the molecular structure. We can program the medical replicator to produce it." Dr. Thrix examined the formula on Devin's screen, her bioluminescence shifting to patterns indicating deep concentration and then alarm. "This molecular structure contains compounds that would be lethal in dozens of species. Only at specific concentrations," Maya explained. "The delivery system adjusts dynamically. This is untested, unproven, and completely outside protocol," Dr. Thrix insisted. "Welcome to human medicine," Jack said with a grin that did nothing to inspire confidence, where winging it is a technical term. Commander Krell watched the exchange with growing concern. On one hand, his soldiers were getting worse by the hour. 3 more had fallen ill just that morning. On the other hand, trusting their treatment to methods that seemed more like controlled chaos than medicine went against everything the Alliance stood for. "If this treatment is so effective," Krell asked carefully, "why hasn't the Alliance adopted it as standard protocol?" Jack exchanged glances with his team before answering. Because the Alliance Medical Council has certain ethical boundaries that human medicine sometimes steps over. Nothing dangerous, he added quickly, seeing Krell's expression. Just, experimental approaches that haven't gone through 70 years of committee reviews. What Dr. Reynolds is trying to say, Marcus offered, is that human medical advances often outpace bureaucracy. What seems radical today will be standard practice in a decade. Assuming it works and doesn't kill everyone, Devon added helpfully, earning a glare from Maya. Commander Krell was about to respond when an alarm blared throughout the station. Lieutenant Vapri's voice came over the comm system. Commander to Medical Bay 3. Emergency situation. Krell and both medical teams rushed to the adjacent ward where the newest patients were kept under observation. Inside, they found a draconian officer convulsing violently, his scales shedding in alarming quantities as his body thrashed against the restraints of the medical pod. Full neural cascade, Dr. Thrix said, her voice tight as she moved to administer a stabilizing agent. Wait, Jack shouted, pushing forward. That'll accelerate the process. Without waiting for permission, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device, pressing it against the soldier's neck. There was a hissing sound, and almost immediately, the convulsions began to subside. What did you just do? Dr. Thrix demanded. Jack held up the empty injector. Emergency neural stabilizer. Our own formula. It'll buy him a few hours at most, but it proves our theory the cascade can be interrupted. Commander Krell looked from the now stable patient to Jack's determined face and felt the weight of command press down on him like a neutron star. How long before your treatment is ready? The replicator can produce the first batch in 6 hours, Jack said, but there's a catch. Of course there was. With humans, there was always a catch. We need to test it first, Jack continued, and given the adaptive nature of the compound, we need to test it on each major species type represented in your crew. Absolutely not, Dr. Thrix interjected. We cannot experiment on patients without extensive review and… We're not suggesting that, Jack interrupted. We have another solution. The look on his face made Commander Krell's threat sacs inflate involuntarily. We're going to test it on ourselves first. The senior staff meeting that followed Jack's announcement could generously be described as heated. Less generously, it resembled the preliminary stages of an interspecies diplomatic incident. This is insanity. Dr. Thrix's bioluminescence was flashing so rapidly it was giving Commander Krell a headache. You propose to inject yourselves with compounds designed to interact with non-human biology. The risk of fatal reaction is astronomical. Jack leaned back in his chair, looking irritatingly calm for someone proposing what amounted to sophisticated suicide in Krell's opinion. The smart molecules are designed to adapt to any biology they encounter. Testing them on ourselves first is the fastest way to prove they work without risking your patients. But you're human, Krell pointed out, feeling this rather obvious fact needed stating. My crew consists primarily of Selnari, Draconian, and Vexillian individuals. How would testing on human biology prove anything? That's the beauty of it, Maya explained, displaying molecular diagrams on the conference room's holographic projector. We've designed the base compound with a neural mapping function. It essentially takes a snapshot of normal neural patterns before initiating the reset sequence. And, Jack continued, we've modified our own neural patterns to temporarily mimic the affected state of your crew. Different causes, same symptoms. Lieutenant Vapri, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. You gave yourselves the illness? Deliberately? Not exactly, Devon said. We've used targeted electromagnetic stimulation to create similar neural misfiring patterns. It's temporary, but close enough for testing purposes. Dr. Thrix's upper arms crossed in what Krell recognized as her most adamant stance. This violates every protocol established by the Alliance Medical Code. Your protocols weren't written with humans in mind, Jack countered. It's still a… Look, I get it. From your perspective, this looks reckless, but from ours it's standard procedure. Throughout human history, medical researchers have tested treatments on themselves first. It's tradition. A tradition of madness, Dr. Thrix muttered. Jack shrugged. Called the scientific method where I come from. Besides, the situation is escalating faster than you realize. He nodded to Maya, who displayed new diagnostic scans. The infection rate has increased by 27% in the last 12 hours, she explained. At this progression, over half the station will be affected within 2 days. And the first patients are showing signs of entering the communication breakdown phase. As if to illustrate this point, an alert chimed on Krell's communication device. He checked it, his antennae drooping visibly. 3 more security officers and a navigation specialist have just reported to medical with initial symptoms. A heavy silence fell over the conference room. Finally, Commander Krell asked the question weighing on everyone's minds. How exactly would this self-experimentation proceed, Dr. Reynolds? Jack nodded to his team, and Marcus distributed data tablets showing a detailed protocol. We've prepared 4 variations of the treatment, each targeting the specific neural biology of the major species on this station. Each member of my team will take 1 variant. All 4 of you? Krell's mandibles clicked in surprise. No, Jack said. Just me. This prompted immediate protests from his team, which Jack silenced with a raised hand. I'm the chief medical officer. This is my call. The risk is mine to take. Jack, that's not how we do things, Maya argued. But the statistical validity isn't the point right now, Jack interrupted. Speed is. And if something goes wrong, you 3 need to be functional to fix it or find another solution. Commander Krell watched this exchange with growing confusion. The human doctor was simultaneously displaying both reckless disregard for personal safety and careful strategic planning. It was contradictory in a way that made Krell's organized mind uncomfortable. How quickly would we know if the treatment works? Lieutenant Vapri asked. The neural reset is almost immediate, Jack explained. If it works, I'll experience a brief shutdown of specific neural pathways. It'll look like I'm having a seizure followed by rapid reorganization. The whole process takes about 6 minutes. And if it doesn't work? Dr. Thrix asked quietly. Jack met her gaze steadily. Then you'll have valuable data on what not to try on your patients. The conference room erupted into arguments again, with Maya, Devon, and Marcus all insisting on various modifications to the plan. Dr. Thrix continued to cite Alliance regulations that prohibited such experimentation, while Lieutenant Vapri calculated casualty projections if the illness continued to spread unchecked. Commander Krell sat silently, watching Jack Reynolds. The human's expression was calm, determined, and completely confident. Either he was an excellent actor, or he genuinely believed in his solution. Finally, Krell raised a hand, silencing the room. Dr. Reynolds, if I authorize this demonstration, I want your word that you will follow Dr. Thrix's safety protocols during the procedure itself. Absolutely, Jack agreed immediately. And you truly believe this is the only viable solution? Krell pressed. Jack's expression turned serious. Commander, in human medical history, we've faced countless situations where playing it safe meant guaranteed failure. Sometimes the only way forward is to take the leap. This is one of those times. Krell's antennae twitched as he considered the options. By Alliance standards, what Jack proposed was reckless bordering on criminal, but if it worked... Very well, he decided. You have 4 hours to prepare. The procedure will be conducted under full quarantine protocols with both Dr. Thrix and your team monitoring. As the meeting disbanded, Dr. Thrix approached Krell privately. Commander, I must register a formal protest. This human is going to kill himself performing an unauthorized medical experiment on our station. Your protest is noted, Doctor, Krell replied. But ask yourself this, if our positions were reversed and our crew was dying on a human station, wouldn't you want them to try everything possible to save them? Dr. Thrix's bioluminescence dimmed slightly. That's not the point, Commander. Isn't it? Krell watched as Jack huddled with his team, already making preparations. I think that's exactly the point. 4 hours later, The medical bay had been transformed into what Jack called a controlled experimental environment, but what looked to Krell suspiciously like the set of a horror entertainment vid. Monitoring equipment surrounded a central bed where Jack now sat, allowing Maya to attach various sensors to his head and chest. The neural stimulator has successfully replicated the misfiring patterns we've observed in the Selnari patients, Maya reported, showing Dr. Thrix the readings. Jack's brain activity now mimics the early cascade phase. Jack was already showing symptoms, minor coordination difficulties, and a tendency to tap his fingers in complex patterns. "I can feel it," he said, blinking rapidly. "Weird sensation. Like my thoughts are taking scenic routes through my brain." Dr. Thrix checked the readings herself, her bioluminescence pulsing with reluctant interest. "The pattern match is surprisingly accurate," she admitted. "Told you we know what we're doing," Devon said, putting final touches on what appeared to be 4 different injection devices, each labeled with a different species name. "The first test will be with the Selnari variant," Jack explained to Krell, who had insisted on observing personally, "since they represent the majority of your crew and were the first affected." "And you're certain you've accounted for the biological differences?" Krell asked, unable to keep the concern from his voice. Jack smiled, though the effect was somewhat undermined by the fact that he was now blinking in an irregular pattern. "As certain as anyone can be when injecting themselves with experimental compounds designed for 4-eyed insectoid aliens." Before Krell could respond to this less than reassuring statement, Jack nodded to Marcus. "Let's do this." Marcus approached with the injector labeled Selnari, his expression professional but his eyes betraying concern. "Last chance to reconsider the procedure parameters, Doc." "Just stick me already," Jack replied, tilting his head to expose his neck. "The neural mimicry is progressing faster than expected. Good data point, by the way. Maya, make a note." Marcus pressed the injector against Jack's neck. There was a pneumatic hiss, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then Jack's eyes widened, his back arched, and he collapsed into convulsions so violent that Marcus and Devon had to hold him down. Dr. Thrix rushed forward with a medical scanner, her professional instincts overriding her previous objections. "His neural pathways are collapsing. This is exactly what we were concerned about." "No," Maya said firmly, watching the monitors to look at the pattern. "This is exactly what we predicted, neural reset followed by reorganization. It's working." Commander Krell watched in horrified fascination as Jack's body continued to convulse, his eyes rolling back. Just when it seemed the human couldn't possibly survive such trauma, the seizures began to subside. 6 minutes and 23 seconds after the injection, Jack Reynolds gasped, blinked, and sat up. "Holy shit," he said, panting. "That was intense." Maya immediately began running diagnostics, while Dr. Thrix stared in disbelief. "The neural misfiring patterns, they're gone." Jack rotated his shoulders and stretched his neck. No more scenic routes. Thoughts going straight to their destinations again. He looked at the monitoring equipment. "How's it look?" "Neural pathways successfully reset and rebuilding along normal patterns," Maya confirmed. "The smart molecules are already breaking down as designed." Jack grinned triumphantly at Dr. Thrix and Commander Krell. 1 down, 3 to go. Krell's threat sacs fully inflated in alarm. "You can't possibly intend to continue after what we just witnessed." "Of course I do," Jack said, already reaching for the next injector. "That was just the first test. We need data for all 4 species variations." And before anyone could stop him, Jack Reynolds, who had just experienced what looked like death followed by resurrection, injected himself with the second compound. The next 18 minutes were among the most stressful of Commander Krell's military career, and he had once navigated an asteroid field during a solar flare with failed shielding. Jack subjected himself to all 4 treatments in succession, each producing similar but slightly different convulsions as his nervous system was repeatedly shut down and restarted. By the final injection, even Dr. Thrix had stopped protesting and was instead taking detailed notes, her scientific curiosity evidently overcoming her ethical objections. When Jack finally completed the 4th test, the Vexillian variant, he remained conscious but looked exhausted. All 4 variants successful, he managed to say before Maya forced him to lie back down. And the treatment works. You can start producing it for your patients. Commander Krell approached the bed, his antennae extended in what humans might interpret as respect. Dr. Reynolds, that was either the bravest or most foolish thing I have ever witnessed. Jack managed a weak smile. In human medicine, those are often the same thing. Word spread quickly through Proxima Station about the human doctor who had killed himself 4 times to develop a treatment. By the time the medical replicator finished producing the first batch of medicine, a small crowd had gathered outside the medical bay, friends and colleagues of the affected patients, all anxious for news. Inside, a transformation had taken place. Dr. Thrix, who had been so adamantly opposed to Jack's methods, was now directing the treatment implementation with precise efficiency. Her forearms moved in perfect coordination as she prepared injectors while simultaneously updating patient files and monitoring vital signs. We'll begin with the most advanced cases, she instructed her medical team. Administer, according to the modified protocols Dr. Reynolds provided. Jack himself was recovering in a corner bed, drinking something the humans called coffee that smelled toxic to Krell's sensitive olfactory receptors. Despite medical advice to rest, the human doctor insisted on observing the treatment administration. The first patient is ready, Dr. Thrix announced. The selected patient was a draconian security officer whose condition had progressed to the communication breakdown phase. Once a fearsome warrior, he now lay in his pod making unintelligible sounds and occasionally attempting to perform complex choreography despite the restraints. Dr. Thrix approached with the injector, then hesitated, looking toward Jack. Perhaps you should administer the first treatment, Dr. Reynolds. It is, after all, your protocol. The medical bay fell silent at this unexpected gesture of respect. Jack nodded, and slowly made his way to the patient's side, taking the injector from Dr. Thrix. Here we go, he said softly. Neural reset treatment for patient Zex Thrall, Security Division. Administering draconian variant at 0930 hours. The injection proceeded exactly as Jack had predicted. The draconian officer experienced the same convulsions Jack had demonstrated, though the episode lasted slightly longer, 7 minutes and 12 seconds. When it ended, the patient blinked, looked around in confusion, then spoke his first coherent words in days. What the hell happened to me? A cheer erupted from the observing medical staff, quickly silenced by Dr. Thrix's stern glare. And maintain professional decorum, she admonished, though Krell noticed her bioluminescence was pulsing in patterns associated with satisfaction and relief. Over the next 12 hours, all affected patients received the treatment. The human medical team and Dr. Thrix's staff worked in seamless coordination, with Maya handling the Solnari patients, Marcus the Vexillians, and Devon assisting wherever needed. Jack supervised the overall operation, making minor adjustments to the protocol as they gathered more data from each species' response. Commander Krell observed it all, marveling at how quickly hostility had transformed into cooperation. Dr. S.A. Thrix, who had been ready to file formal complaints about the humans' methods just a day earlier, was now engaged in detailed technical discussions with Maya about neural pathway reconstruction patterns. Fascinating adaptation, she was saying, her upper arms gesturing animatedly while her lower arms continued to prepare injectors. The smart molecules appear to work more efficiently in actual patient tissue than in laboratory simulations. That's because they learn, Maya explained. Each application provides data that helps refine the molecular response pattern. It's basically tiny machines that evolve in real time. Such technology is not in the Alliance database, Dr. Thrix noted. It wouldn't be, Jack said, joining their conversation. We developed it about 6 months ago. Paperwork's probably still making its way through your bureaucracy. Krell approached as the last patient was receiving treatment. Dr. Reynolds, your methods may be unconventional, but the results speak for themselves. Every patient is showing signs of recovery. That's the thing about human medicine, Commander, Jack replied. We tend to favor results over process. Sometimes that means taking risks that seem insane to more established medical traditions. Like injecting yourself with 4 different experimental compounds designed for alien physiologies. Krell's mandibles clicked in what Jack was learning to recognize as the Selnari version of dry humor. Exactly like that, Jack agreed with a grin. Though I wouldn't recommend it as a regular practice. I'm pretty sure I temporarily died at least twice. 3 times, Maya corrected, passing by with a datapad. Your brain activity flatlined completely during the Vexillian variant test. Jack said thoughtfully. That explains the weird tunnel vision and my Aunt Mabel telling me it wasn't my time yet. Dr. Thrix's bioluminescence flickered in patterns, suggesting alarm. You experienced death visions, and you didn't report this immediately. This requires further study. Welcome to working with humans, Doctor, Commander Krell said sympathetically. They tend to consider temporary death a minor side effect hardly worth mentioning. As the treatment protocol continued, the atmosphere in the medical bay gradually shifted from tense medical emergency to something almost celebratory. Patients who had been incoherent or locked in repetitive behaviors just hours before were now sitting up, asking questions, and in some cases looking extremely embarrassed about their previous dance performances. A young Selnari navigator approached Jack hesitantly. Is it true you tested the medicine on yourself first? All 4 variants? Standard procedure, Jack replied with a casual shrug that Krell now recognized as performative modesty. Humans, it seemed, took particular pride in appearing nonchalant about their most extraordinary actions. But why? The navigator persisted. Our physiologies are completely different. You risked your life on an extremely low probability of success. Jack considered this, then answered more seriously, because that's what human doctors do. We don't ask our patients to take risks we wouldn't take ourselves. It's not just ethics, it's about understanding exactly what we're asking of people when we treat them. By the end of the day, 47 patients had been successfully treated. Only 2 experienced minor complications, a draconian with temporary sensory hypersensitivity and a Vexillian whose bioluminescence patterns were slightly out of sync, but even these issues were resolving naturally as their neural pathways continued to rebuild. In the station's command center, Commander Krell updated Alliance Command on the situation. The outbreak has been contained, and all affected personnel are recovering. Station operational capacity should return to normal within 48 hours. The holographic projection of Admiral Jean V.A., a stern Vexillian with elaborate bioluminescence patterns denoting her high rank, nodded approvingly. Excellent work, Commander. The Alliance Medical Council will want a full report on the treatment protocol developed by your medical team. Krell hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. The protocol was actually developed by the human medical contingent, Admiral, using methods that might be considered unconventional by Alliance standards. The Admiral's bioluminescence dimmed slightly. I see. Were proper protocols followed? The humans followed their protocols, Krell answered carefully, which differ somewhat from ours but proved highly effective in this situation. I see. The Admiral repeated, clearly reading between the lines. Well, results matter most in emergency situations. I'll inform the Council to expect both a standard report and supplementary documentation on the human methodologies. After ending the transmission, Krell sat back in his command chair, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. The Alliance would eventually need to come to terms with human medical practices if they were to successfully integrate Earth into their coalition. The differences were stark, but there was undeniable value in the human approach, despite or perhaps because of its seeming recklessness. When Krell returned to the medical bay later that evening, he found Jack and Dr. Thrix engaged in animated conversation, surrounded by holographic neural pathway displays. The remarkable thing, Dr. Thrix was saying, all 4 of her arms gesturing simultaneously at different data points, is how the smart molecules adapted differently to each species' neural architecture while maintaining the same fundamental repair mechanism. That's actually why self-testing was so critical, Jack explained. Each variant needed to recognize and respond to specific neural patterns. The basic protocol was the same, but the molecular recognition signatures had to be calibrated for each physiological type. Dr. Thrix's bioluminescence shifted to patterns indicating intellectual excitement. This challenges our entire approach to cross-species medicine. Perhaps our caution has been limiting our innovation. Jack laughed. And maybe our recklessness could use a dose of your methodical approach. I wouldn't recommend my testing method as standard practice. Yet you would do it again, Krell observed, joining them. In a heartbeat, Jack confirmed without hesitation. Or technically, in the absence of several heartbeats, given the temporary deaths. The Admiral has requested a complete report, Krell informed them, including detailed documentation of the human methodologies. Dr. Thrix's bioluminescence dimmed slightly. The Medical Council will not be pleased with the procedural deviations. Let them try filing a complaint while 47 patients who were dancing themselves to death yesterday are now walking out of here with nothing but embarrassing memories. Maya interjected, approaching with a datapad full of patient recovery metrics. Perhaps, Krell suggested diplomatically, we could emphasize the collaborative aspects of the solution. The human innovative approach combined with Alliance medical resources and Dr. Thrix's expertise in Zen neurology. Jack nodded appreciatively. Politics. You're good at that, Commander. Necessary skills for managing a station with 17 different species, Doctor. Over the next 2 days, the recovery ward transformed. Patients who had been locked in repetitive movements were now ambulatory and coherent, though many suffered from exhaustion and muscle strain. The draconian security officer, Zex Thrall, had regained enough of his intimidating presence to begin organizing security rotation schedules from his recovery bed. I remember everything, he told Jack during a follow-up examination. I was aware, trapped inside my mind while my body performed those ridiculous movements. It was undignified. Memory retention is consistent across all patients, Maya confirmed, reviewing the data. That's actually remarkable, given the neural reset process, and potentially traumatic, Jack added. We should implement psychological support protocols for all recovering patients. Dr. Thrix tilted her head in consideration. We have no established protocols for psychological trauma resulting from consciousness entrapment during neurological disease. We do, Jack said. Earth has extensive experience with locked-in conditions. I'll share our counseling frameworks. By the 3rd day, the medical emergency had officially ended. The station's operational capacity returned to 89% efficiency, with full recovery expected within a week. In the medical bay, human and Alliance staff had established new integrated workflows, with technologies from both medical traditions being employed side by side. Commander Krell found Jack in the nearly empty recovery ward, watching as the last few patients prepared for discharge. The Alliance Medical Council has reviewed our preliminary report, Krell informed him. They were impressed, if somewhat alarmed by your methods. Jack smiled wryly. Let me guess they're implementing regulations to prevent similar reckless experimentation in the future? Actually, Krell replied, mandibles clicking in amusement. They're establishing a new research division focused on adapting human medical innovation methodologies to Alliance protocols. They've requested your team as consultants. Jack looked genuinely surprised. That's unexpectedly open-minded of them. The Alliance didn't become the predominant interstellar coalition by rejecting effective approaches, Doctor. We may prefer methodical caution, but we recognize results. Krell paused, then added, they're calling it the Reynolds Protocol. Oh God, Jack groaned. Please tell me you're joking. Inmo? Selnari, don't joke about protocol names, Doctor. It's going into the official medical codex. 1 week after the neural disease outbreak had been contained, Proxima Station hosted an official ceremony recognizing the human medical team's contribution. The station's central atrium had been transformed with representatives from all 17 species in attendance, many of them former patients. Jack shifted uncomfortably in his formal uniform as Commander Krell addressed the gathered crowd. Maya elbowed him discreetly. Stand still, she whispered. This is a big deal. I hate ceremonies, Jack muttered back, and I really hate being the center of attention for doing my job. The Reynolds protocol, Krell was saying to the assembled crowd, represents more than a medical breakthrough. It symbolizes the potential of true collaboration between Earth medical traditions and Alliance practices. Dr. Thrick stood nearby, her bioluminescence pulsing in formal patterns denoting respect and appreciation. She had become an unlikely advocate for the human medical team, having spent the past week co-authoring comprehensive documentation of the treatment with Maya. As the ceremony concluded, representatives from various species approached the human team. A Vexillian engineer, whose intricate bioluminescence patterns had been reduced to chaotic flashing during his illness, now displayed elegant sequences as he expressed his gratitude. "Yeah. You restored not just my health but my identity," he told Jack, his translator rendering the complex light patterns into speech. "For my kind, our patterns are our social signature. To lose control of them is to lose oneself." Jack nodded in understanding. That's why the psychological impact of this disease varied so dramatically between species. For Draconians, the loss of physical dignity was most traumatic. For Selnari, the interruption of collective thought patterns. For humans, it would be the inability to communicate. "Yet you understood enough about all our experiences to create a solution," the engineer observed. "Perhaps that is the unique human contribution, the ability to imagine alien suffering as if it were your own." Later that evening, a smaller gathering took place in what the humans had dubbed the Junction Bar, a recreational space where off-duty personnel from all species could interact in environmental conditions acceptable to most physiologies. Jack found himself sharing a table with Dr. Thrix, Commander Krell, and his human team. The varied drinks before them reflected the biochemical diversity of the group. Marcus sipping Earth whiskey, Dr. Thrix consuming a glowing Vexillian neurostimulant, and Krell enjoying something that looked disturbingly like moving sand. To successful integration, Krell proposed, raising his unusual drink, and to learning from differences rather than just tolerating them. Jack added, raising his own glass. Dr. Thrix's bioluminescence shimmered in patterns that Jack was beginning to recognize as thoughtful consideration. "I have been reviewing human medical history," she said. "Your species has a remarkable pattern of converting catastrophes into opportunities for advancement." "That's a polite way of saying we learned the hard way," Marcus commented. "Perhaps," Dr. Thrix acknowledged, "but there is value in that approach. The Alliance medical tradition emphasizes preventing errors rather than learning from them. Both philosophies have merit." "The best of both worlds," Maya suggested, would be to combine Alliance thoroughness with human innovative flexibility, which is precisely what the Reynolds protocol represents, Krell noted. Jack groaned again at the name, but couldn't suppress a smile. "Just promise me you won't put my face on the medical textbooks." As the evening progressed, the conversation shifted from professional to personal. Dr. Thrix expressed curiosity about Earth culture, while Devin asked about Vexillian art forms based on bioluminescence patterns. The barriers that had seemed so formidable upon their arrival were gradually dissolving, replaced by genuine curiosity and respect. Commander Krell observed the interactions with satisfaction. This was exactly the kind of integration the Alliance had hoped for when inviting Earth to join not just technological exchange but cultural understanding. When Jack eventually excused himself to check on the few patients still under observation, Krell accompanied him down the corridor. "You know," the commander said thoughtfully, "when your team first arrived, I was concerned your human methods would disrupt our carefully balanced system. And instead we just turned everything upside down before fixing it," Jack finished with a grin. "Precisely. Perhaps that is the true human contribution to the Alliance, not just your technology or your medical knowledge, but your willingness to challenge established patterns when necessary."